Why New York City makes you pay rent for your own building. One of the most frustrating conversations I have with New York City property owners goes like this. Wait, I have to pay the city every year for something attached to my building? And the answer is absolutely yes, you do. Because once your structure occupies New York City public right of way, the city may charge annual fees for continued use of that space. And for a lot of owners, this becomes the moment they realize, I can't do what I want with my own building. I've seen property owners completely blindsided by this, especially when they discover annual fees, escrow requirements, insurance obligations, and legal agreements tied to structures that may have existed for decades. So in this video, I'll explain why New York City charges these fees, what types of structures are affected, and why these agreements can become attached to a property for generations. This is the part that upsets many owners, because from their perspective, they already paid for the whole building. They maintain it, they insure it, they repair it. So naturally they think, why am I paying additional fees to New York City too? The reason is because the new structure occupies public right-of-way owned by the city. New York City treats that space as a public property being used for private benefit. That's why recurring annual revocable consent fees exist in the first place. What type of structures get charged? These fees can apply to vaults underneath sidewalks, sidewalk cafes, fenced-in areas, handicap ramps, building projections, canopies, underground electrical conduits, bridges or walkways between buildings, and other permanent structures extending into city property. And depending on the structure, the yearly fees can continue indefinitely. I've had owners shocked to discover they inherited these obligations from previous ownership decades earlier. Because once these agreements become attached to a property, they often stay there for a very long time, typically the duration of the consent. The escrow requirement shocks people. This is another bombshell many owners never expect. In all cases, New York City will require money to be placed into escrow tied to the agreement. That escrow deposit will remain there for the life of the revocable consent itself. So you can definitely kiss that money goodbye. So now owners suddenly realize, wait, I'm paying annual fees and tying up thousands of dollars too? That's usually the moment they understand. This is much more than a normal permit process, way more than they care to chew. And if you already have a vault, a fenced-in area, accessibility ramp, sidewalk or roadway cafe, or any permanent structure extending into New York City right away, send me the address and the structure type using the link in the description below to verify this applies to your project. Because many owners don't even realize these agreements or yearly fees exist until refinancing, a property sale, or renovation work suddenly expose these issues. Why these agreements follow the property? A lot of people think these issues disappear when ownership changes. They don't. This is because revocable consent agreements are tied to the property itself, despite an agreement being initiated by a previous homeowner and the city. That means new owners, future buyers, banks, title companies, and attorneys may all eventually review these agreements later. And if paperwork is missing, expired, or back fees are due, these issues can suddenly become a problem during a property transaction like refinancing or property sale. Why some owners get very frustrated. I understand why homeowners get upset about this process, especially when the structure has existed forever, the new owners didn't build it, or they inherited the property without knowing these fiscal obligations existed. But from New York City's perspective, private structures are occupying public right-of-way for private use. So the city wants legal agreements, insurance protection, maintenance responsibility, and ongoing fees tied to that occupation. That's how New York City views these structures legally. If your property has a ramp, fenced-in area, sidewalk or roadway cafe, or any permanent structure extending into New York City property, don't assume the legal paperwork and yearly payment obligations were handled properly by previous owners. Find out exactly how to deal with this by clicking the link in the description below so I can confirm what your obligations are. You don't want to discover these issues when the bank, attorneys, or city agencies start reviewing your property closely. And by then, the issue can become extremely time sensitive very quickly, impossible to deal with quickly, ruining your your schedule. It's much better to identify these problems early before they delay a refinancing, a sale, or construction project.